We're going to begin with the White House facing growing backlash after President Trump's stunning proposal to take ownership of the Gaza Strip.
They had to do their own and focus on their own. Go over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area.
In a press conference with Israel's prime minister, the president proposed the U.S. redevelop the war-torn enclave and keep it under U.S. control. The proposal would also displace more than 2 million Palestinians who live in Gaza during that reconstruction.
We have an opportunity to do something that could be phenomenal. And I don't want to be cute. I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be so bad. This could be so magnificent.
For more, we are joined by NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez. We will also be speaking with Yasmin Vossoughian joining us from Tel Aviv. Gabe, I'll start with you. Good morning. Talk us through President Trump's plan here. What exactly would it mean for the U.S. to take over Gaza, as he said? Are we talking about U.S. troops on the ground?
Well, Savannah, good morning. The shock, both here in Washington and around the world, cannot be overstated. There are just so many questions about how this would even work and how this land grab would unfold. Now, as you just played, President Trump yesterday breaking with long-standing U.S. policy of wanting a two-state solution involving the Israelis and the Palestinians, and seeming to suggest, not ruling out that U.S. troops could be sent to Gaza. Now, the president also suggesting that neighboring countries such as Egypt and Jordan might take in Palestinian refugees. It should be noted that both countries and others around the Middle East have said that is not really an option. And really, there's been widespread condemnation around the world from China, Russia, and many other countries that have spoken out overnight, talking about the feasibility, questioning the feasibility of this plan. Now, as you said, the president arguing that the U.S. could get involved to perhaps create what he described as the Riviera of the Middle East. And there are just so many questions here about how the Gaza Strip, which is home to about 2 million Palestinians, whether many of them would even want to leave. The president calling the area a living hell and suggesting that why would they want to return? Of course, as I said, that is being met with a lot of skepticism, condemnation, and just simply disbelief around the world, Savannah.
And Gabe, tell us about lawmaker reaction on both sides of the aisle to this.
Well, this is receiving bipartisan backlash. Senator Chris Coon, for example, yesterday saying that he was speechless. And overnight, we are getting more Republican reaction as well. Even some Republicans, for example, really questioning how this would even work. Some lawmakers calling it deranged. Even Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina calling the proposal problematic, saying we'll see what the Arab world says, but it would be problematic in many ways. Senator Tim Kaine is the one who called this, quote, deranged nuts, and that calling the U.S. military presence in the region a magnet for trouble. And even Senator Thom Tillis, a Republican from North Carolina, saying there are a few kinks in that slinky. And asked to elaborate, he said, it's obviously not going to happen, Savannah.
Gabe, I want to shift gears before I let you go. Something we talked a lot about yesterday. Overnight, USAID, they announced almost all direct hires will be placed on administrative leave this week. This is after the Trump administration's push to dismantle the organization, something Elon Musk has been very involved in. What does that mean at this point for aid around the world? Is the organization, for all intents and purposes, shut down?
Well, it is not completely shut down yet, but it appears to be heading that way, as you said. Overnight, employees received an email saying that all direct hires will be placed on administrative leave starting on Friday. And essentially, it's the organization, the agency has been taken over by the State Department. It was Secretary of State Marco Rubio being appointed the acting director and designating one of his deputies to look for ways to cut waste from this organization. But there are major concerns around the world that the loss of USAID could lead to the U.S. losing influence in other parts of the world, such as Africa the Middle East and elsewhere, and that other countries such as China and Russia could step in to fill the vacuum. Savannah.
All right, Gabe, thank you so much. Let's go now to NBC News correspondent Yasmin Vossoughian. She joins us from Tel Aviv. Yasmin, many U.S. allies have been quick to distance themselves from these comments by the president about the U.S. taking over Gaza. What's been the reaction from the people of Gaza and from Palestinian Authority?
I think across the board, when it comes to Palestinians specifically, when it comes to militants, Islamic militants, when it comes to the Palestinian Authority, hearing from Islamic Jihad, hearing from Hamas as well overnight, they completely denounce any notion of Gazans, of Palestinians having to leave Gaza. I think, Savannah, it's important to understand what represents home to them. These are individuals who have lived in Gaza for an incredibly long time. They were forced to evacuate to the south because of the bombings and the war that were happening in the north of Gaza. After the ceasefire, many of them by foot made their way back to the north to see what was left of their homes, finding mostly rubble. But instead of then going back to where they came from, they are making homes within the rubble because for them, Savannah, Gaza is their home. This is their community. The only kind of comparison I can make, I think, for many Americans that have been watching, obviously, the LA wildfires and the devastation happening there is for so many people that lost their homes and their belongings in those Los Angeles wildfires, yes, it was incredibly sad, but it was the communities that were so incredibly important to them. The churches they went to, the coffee shops that they gathered at, right? The playgrounds, the schools as well. For these Gazans, those are the same concerns. Those are the same communities they have as well. We have an incredibly brave team of journalists on the ground in Gaza, Savannah, talking to Palestinians about this very issue. If they would ever even consider leaving Gaza, as President Trump is saying. Let's take a listen to what one individual had to say, and then we'll talk on the other side.
This call for displacement is not new. Many plans talked about this issue and failed. Of course, the plan of U.S. President Donald Trump will fail because Gazans hold on to their land, country, and soil of their nation. Many wars passed on Palestine, and specifically Gaza, and did not lead the Palestinian people to migrate or travel to other countries. The people are steady and will remain until the last breath in this life.
And that is a sentiment of many Palestinians. And by the way, while the Israeli media may be celebrating this, while the right wing of the Israeli government celebrating this, as well as we have heard, there are a lot of Israelis, especially here in Tel Aviv, that I've been speaking to repeatedly that believe that Gazans should be able to remain in Gaza, not unlike what the president and the prime minister are now putting out there.
And Yasmin, on that very point, we did hear the president repeat his view that Jordan and Egypt should take in Palestinians while, in his view, some type of rebuilding happens. But those countries, other Arab nations across the region have rejected that. And obviously, we just heard from Palestinians directly there. What more are we hearing from these other countries about these latest comments from Mr. Trump?
Putting it frankly, Savannah, it feels as if a nuclear bomb has gone off in the Middle East. The King Abdullah of Jordan going to the United States to meet with the president February 11th. Al-Sisi, Egyptian president, meeting on Thursday with the president as well. Obviously, major players there. We've heard from the foreign minister of Egypt rejecting this notion, continuing to talk about rebuilding Gaza. We have heard from MBS, from the kingdom in Saudi Arabia, rejecting this notion of Gazans having to leave Gaza. We've heard from Iran as well. As I mentioned earlier, we've heard from Islamic militants, the Palestinians, the PA. Across the board, what we are looking at really is a unifying, possibly, of the Middle East. There was a certain point of it, as many of us remember, especially leading up to October 7th, where we were looking at normalization of relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel, right? It was this unprecedented moment for the possibility of normalization of relations between these two countries that have been really enemies for quite some time. Instead, now, this sentiment coming from the White House, along with Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu, could very much rock that potential and rock the Middle East and unify nations that had not been unified before. And let's not forget, by the way, the possibility of the unification also around this issue of Russia and China, Savannah.
All right, Yasmin Vossoughian from Tel Aviv for us on our top story this morning. Thank you, Yasmin.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.